Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Being 5:30, I'll call to order this meeting of Fitchburg Board of Public Works for Monday, April 21st, 2025, held here at City Hall in the Francis Huntley Cooper Council Chambers. Attending tonight, to my left, Alder Jetzer, myself, board members Dave Woburn and Don Gutowski. I don't believe we have any.
Just a second. Can we go into a quick recess?
Yes, we can. We are moving into, we're going to take a short recess. We're having some technical difficulties. Public appearances for non-agenda items, we do not have any, so it moves us to agenda item 3A, approval of April 7th Board of Public Works meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
Moved by Bill, second, or moved by Don, second by Bill. Questions, corrections, discussion?
None.
Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next, we have the report to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Tim Volker, PE.
Thank you. Good evening. Just one follow-up item from our April 7th, 2025 Board of Public Works meeting. It was in reference to check number 128316, which was paid to Minuteman Press, also MMP for late notices, and the late notices weren't for the city paying a late bill. The late notices were mailed to our utility customers with a late water, sewer, or stormwater bill. So instead of shutting off service, the city's been sending out notices to our customers in advance. And then a couple project updates. The first is phase 2. Contractor commenced construction today. They mobilized to the site. And then phase 3 for the Saline Road project continues construction. Our 2025 street resurfacing project, award of the contract is on tomorrow night's council agenda, or actually that was on last council's agenda, and then the pre-construction meeting was held this past Friday, April 18th. And then we're looking to start construction at the end of May. And then also a public information meeting is going to be held in the council chambers a week from today on Monday, April 28th, 2025 at 6 p.m. for the street resurfacing project. Letters were mailed out last week, and then social media posts will be forthcoming for that. And then our 2025 street maintenance project, that's our crack filling and chip seal project. The project has been advertised, and we're looking to open bids at the beginning of May for that project. And then lastly, our 2024 sidewalk replacement project. The contractor is going to be remobilizing a week from today, April 28th, 2025. And then we're looking to have them complete our 2024 sidewalk replacement project by the end of May. With that, does anyone have any questions?
Board. should have jotted it down here. Did we incur any damage with the hail that came on?
No damage that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right. And second thing, are we kind of caught up with the street sweeping? If we got through the city to get up most of the grit from the winter season? And
Yes,
such?
and typically at the beginning of spring, Mark will run both street sweepers just to get all that grit and dirt off the roads from winter. So,
And I had one last question. Maybe Ross knows. Cannonball Trail, the portion that goes parallel to the pond down there along Seminole, there's a spur off that goes up to Sentinel, not Sentinel Pass, but Chapel Valley or Chapel.
Are you talking about the spur that takes you
Yeah.
to the Cap City Trail?
No, it's that's the Cannonball Trail.
Are you talking like immediately east of
The
Seminole
one
Highway?
we walked over that had the wood surface on it. That's the Cannonball Trail, and it goes up to.
Oh, right. Okay, up to Apache Park. Yes.
And the question was, does the city of Fitchburg own that, or is that the county? And the reason we asked is we had some residents, they mentioned that they ride, it's cooler, they turn on there and it gets really slippery because it's got
Right there.
poly wood or manufactured wood. Yeah, okay, right. Yep. Thanks, Ross. That's right. That's it right there. And there's a bridge section on it. It's really nice.
the boardwalk.
The boardwalk is
It's
very
made
nice.
of composite,
composite
recycled
wood.
material, and it was even when it was dry, it was pretty slippery.
We were wondering, do we own that, or is that the county? Does anyone know?
You talking the boardwalk
The
portion of it?
boardwalk, yeah, the boardwalk there.
I do not know.
Yeah, I believe that's maintained by Parks. We can.
And I can check with Jordan.
Can you
Yeah,
check
and
on that?
I'll report back at the next Board of Public
Okay.
Works meeting.
Reason we we discussed whether maybe we can do something on it to a little more friction on it. It's really a beautiful surface, but when it gets a little wet, it's slippery. Okay, that's all I had. Thank
Did you also
Tim.
want to ask about the stop sign?
I talked
okay.
to Ross about it already. Got that. All right, so then, thank you, Tim. We'll move into our agenda items. First, we have 5A, Resolution R4125, approving First Amendment to license with T-Mobile Centra LLC for communication equipment on Tower C. We have a motion to approve.
I so move we approve resolution number R-41-25.
Moved by Dave. Do we have a
Second.
Second by Don. This amendment, we're extending the agreement fee out to 25 years in exchange for changing the annual increase, from 4 to 3%. I think that's the gist of it, and this will start in 2029. So I would say for the certainly it'll probably be in place after I'm not on this earth anymore with that long, but never know. Was there anything additional on it that you want to ask, Bill?
Yeah, just a question on the rent. The referral sheet says $54,000 per year, but in the actual amendment, it says in words $45,000 and then parenthetically $54,000. I did go back and look at the similar agreement for Tower E in R4225, and that one only mentions $45,000.
And it may just be the word. I believe it's 54,000. I can double check with Tracy, and we can get that updated prior to tomorrow's council meeting for the agenda packet.
Did you think one of them's incorrect?
Well, one of them has to be incorrect because it says The licensee shall pay the city an annual fee, amended license fee of $45,000 and no 100.
Oh.
And then it says 54,000 in
Okay.
parentheses.
Thank you, I'm sorry, all I saw was the 54, yeah. Yeah, if you could amend that for council, then I'll mention that at council tomorrow. Any other questions on Don, Dave? No? Okay. Bill? Call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R 4125 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, 5 Bravo, Resolution R 5325, approving change order number 3 for 2024 street resurfacing project. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Moved by Alder Jetser.
Second.
Do we have a second? Second by Don. I believe there's 2 parts to this. One is for additional tonnage of asphalt. I think that was roughly 45 or 46,000. And then when we did this work, then we had to reseat some of the water valve boxes, and that was the additional part of it. And this will require a 2/3 vote from council. And the money we're taking the money from the street resurfacing this year, Tim?
Correct.
Okay.
It'd be coming from this 2024 street resurfacing project and looking, well.
2025?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
20.
current year.
Correct. The 46,000 for the street additional asphalt would be coming from the street resurfacing, and then about another 4,000 would be coming from water improvements for the water valve boxes.
Okay. I believe this is it. This saga will be closed with the exception of Osmondson that we're still working on.
Yeah, Osmondson will be included in that 2025 street resurfacing, which we're looking to start by the end of May.
Okay. Questions for Tim on this one?
So we had extra money somehow in the 2025 resurfacing fund?
So the resurfacing project, depending on how the project ends the year before, there may be, overages and underages with that contract and money left over. And the city is still kind of catching up from the couple years that we haven't or didn't resurface. So there was some available funding to cover this overage in that account.
So just for people watching, with the whole thing, what's our? I know we discussed it before. What's our lessons learned that came out of this one, just to refresh us all?
With the lessons learned on this particular project, it was with Fitch, Rona, Nesbitt, and Seminole. The city tried chip sealing it, and it with a mill before, and it was still grooved. So we went to a mill and resurface on this, which is more expensive. However, the longevity of the mill and resurface and not having the groove pavement with the mill and chip seal is better in the long term. So it's another tool in the toolbox for us to utilize the mill and resurfacing without pulverizing a road and going to a full overlay.
So I guess the question, what do we have in place so this particular incident, our review process or our scoping for the project?
For particularly the change order on the overage of this?
Just going forward, that we don't have a similar issue.
I think it was 2 parts. One was just kind of how we looked at the quantities. Since the roads were originally chip sealed, the chip seal project's just a length by a width for the roadway. Yeah. Okay. So if we resurface the road, we kind of look at it more closely, where we'll calculate the quantity off an aerial, get the area. So that kind of contributed to the error, and then also just out in the field monitoring as the tickets come in and the tonnage kind of track it. So the city just got a thicker asphalt put on, which is good in the long run. And, fortunately we had the money to pay for that. We actually got a discount because in the specs, we only pay for 50% of the overage, because it's on the contractor to meet that yield. And since they went over, we didn't pay 100% of it. We only paid half of it.
All right. Bill?
Yeah, so like what was the total tonnage, and we were off by what, 4,000, 4,500, something like that?
Yes,
I'm just wondering, because the typical thickness here is like 1 3/4 inches or something that they put back on. So if they're off by 1/8 of an inch for 1/4 of a mile, does that amount to this difference?
So the original change order to tonnage was 3,965 tons. And then once we recalculated it based off the aerial, it was about 4,422 tons. And then the amount placed was 4,630 tons. And then what we're to pay is the 4,584. So it's kind of these two steps is that we recalculated the area more accurately. So that was based off the aerial, as I mentioned. And then any asphalt above the maximum yield is paid at 50% per the contract.
Are there other questions, Don?
I just was looking at like the change order process. It looked like we missed a lot of stuff along the way. We started with a clerical error. We missed some water boxes, overruns on the. I'm just wondering is it when we put the estimate together, are they best guesses?
Well, with the water boxes, we don't know what's underground. So as we excavate, it could be damaged, and we're not going to leave what we can see visibly from the surface, we'll include in the contract documents, but once they mill, it could be damaged further, or there could be additional boxes damaged that we didn't see from the surface. So obviously we're going to fix those and not leave that broke. So that's something we couldn't see. The asphalt tonnage, I think we can do a better job in the future, just kind of with the quantities and making sure that what we put in the original change order is more accurate versus what we ultimately pay.
So we don't have a location, where all the water boxes are in the city.
Yeah, we do have a location, but a valve box goes down to the stem, and it could be there's a couple sections to it that it could be damaged underneath that. Until we really get out in the field and see once construction starts, we don't know that it is damaged underneath.
Understood. All right, thank you.
My only suggestion would be in the future, because I know we had this discussion with change order 1, and we weren't overrun at that time, but we're overrun now. You got a fix for it. In the future, I would not put any additions of extra paving and asphalt for basketball courts on there till we know if we're going to overrun, I think, at the end.
Yeah, and that's actually a separate capital improvement project. As we go through that process and the capital improvement plan comes forward for you guys for approval, I'll kind of explain what we did this year with the paths. We broke it out separately from the project, but I'll explain that as we go through the capital improvement plan. But it's what I'm trying to get at. It's paid separately from a different account than the resurfacing project.
But it shows up as a change order here. So is that?
Yes, because that was change order number 1. So even though it was part of this contract, that funding for the basketball courts is coming from a separate fund than this additional asphalt for the roads. So the roads was paid from one fund, the basketball courts is paid from a separate, entirely different fund.
Okay. Dave, you have anything on this? No. Okay. Bill, anything else?
Well, so maybe piggybacking on what Don was saying, when we have the street resurfacing project, and at the end of it, if there's some asphalt left over, do we find a good use for that, or does it just get hauled away back to the asphalt factory?
Well, that you're saying if we came in under?
Right, so if whatever the estimate was, they wind up with,
say
tonnage left over.
Say it's 1,000 tons in the contract, we only put 950 down, that 50 tons we wouldn't pay for. So
Right, but would we say, hey, as long as you're mobilized and as long as we've got this extra, why don't we go ahead and, replace this section of path or do this basketball court?
it could potentially, like if there was something out there that came up or we had the drawings ready, that is something we could incorporate. We'd have to change order that in. But if we are seeing we're tracking lower and we could do some additional work, that is a possibility.
Anything else? Okay. Call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 5325, approving change order number 3, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have resolution 5, Charlie, R 7025, preliminary assessment resolution for 2025 sidewalk replacement. We have a motion to approve.
I move approval.
Moved by Alder Jetser. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Second by Dave Wilborn. Similar to last year, and we've been having the sidewalk. This is looks like it's focused over on the Orchard Point part of the city here. And I didn't have any. Tim, you want to elaborate a little more? I'll have some more questions for you.
Yes, so this is kind of the first step in the assessment process. This is the preliminary resolution just declaring the city's intent to exercise the special assessment police powers under the Wisconsin State Section 66-0703 and Fitchburg Code of Ordinances Section 10-215 for the cost of the sidewalk replacement. In the city of Fitchburg, as Alder Hertz mentioned, the properties to be assessed, they kind of lie in the along Hard Rock Road, Fitch-Rona Road, Limestone Lane, Nesbitt Road, McKee Road, and in some other locations as necessary. So a lot of it will be commercial properties. I don't believe there's any residential properties within this project.
My question to you, sidewalk should have a life fairly long. That's a relatively new over there. Like if I look at Limestone, and those are pretty new streets. Is something going on there? Granted, there's the grade on some of those that could contribute, but I was surprised when they came up that it's a relatively new development in the city. The Orchard Point area there and Nesbitt.
Yeah, and I can speak to Zach Laundry, our project engineer that did the assessment, specifically what he saw. And as the contract comes forward for this, it's something I can bring up as a discussion item during that agenda item on what we saw and how old it is. And
Sounds good. Thank you. Other questions for Tim? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's one development that's going in just between Nesbitt and Fitch-Rona Road, and then
The hotel there.
Well, no, there's like workforce housing going in there, plus the hotel.
The hotel, okay.
Yeah, didn't even mention the hotel. And then, didn't we talk about another like senior living thing next to the existing one that might be coming in pretty soon? I'm just wondering if with a lot of construction that's going to be happening and the chance for machinery to drive over brand new sidewalk and crack it, is now the right time for that area?
And now I'll take a look to see if he saw any replacements in those particular locations. And, that's something we can put off if that is the case.
Good point, Bill. Anything else, Dave? Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution R 7025, preliminary assessment resolution for 2025 sidewalk placement, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have resolution R 6925, adopting Vision Zero policy. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Moved by Alder Jetser. Do we have a second? Second by Don. So I'm gonna let you guys, you and Ross, discuss this off some
Ross, do you want
comments
to come
later.
up, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so I'm, I know you guys all know, but for the cameras, I'm Ross Kaler, the city's transportation engineer. And this resolution is adopting Vision Zero. Basically, Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate traffic deaths and severe injuries on roadways. And there's a lot of other stuff in this referral sheet that I can answer questions on as you guys see fit. There were also 5 amendments to this at TTC, 4 of which were approved, and all of the approved amendments are just in the text that you see in your packet. So.
All right, anything else you guys want to say before I let the board chime in here? Bill, did you have anything?
We talked about it extensively over the course of months within the Transportation and Transit Commission. I guess the one thing that I might suggest, if you read the full resolution, the last whereas kind of no longer seems to fit, because that's the one and only mention of our comprehensive safety action plan. We may want to remove that whereas. Ross and I chatted just a bit about that, and there used to be more mention of it in there, but now it kind of blindsides you when you get to that part.
That was one of the things in the amendments at TTC that we took out, or that TTC took out.
Ross, Tim, I don't see any of this, our game plan, because it has to be holistic here with it. I understand the engineering, it's great, and I got some more specific questions on what our action plan will do, but I don't see written in here planning, because what we do for planning and growth and development severely impacts how we're going to do traffic and handle the traffic, or our pedestrians that are going to use these facilities. The other part of it in the 3E process, I don't see where our law enforcement's tied into it. Are they tied in our action plan, or how are we tying those two entities in?
So the course of action for this going forward will basically be, if this resolution is passed, the city has stated its intent to basically move forward with Vision Zero. And then we'll move forward with a comprehensive safety action plan, which is that whereas clause that Alder Jetzer was referencing, talks about that. But basically we have applied for a grant through the Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization to get a consultant to put together that comprehensive safety action plan. And that plan is what will contain all of those suggestions and recommendations for both our existing infrastructure, like this intersection is dangerous for pedestrians, or you see a lot of side swipe collisions here. This could be a fix for that. And it will also contain recommendations for our developments going forward. When we install a new intersection of whatever type, we see a lot of issues. So in new developments, don't approve that type of intersection going forward. That'll all be contained in that comprehensive safety action plan, which will be forthcoming once we hear more about that Safe Streets for All grant. That's through the federal government. We're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern with that grant right now, so hopefully we'll hear more soon.
Is the grant, or do we have influence over areas we want to reinforce for our own action plan? Again, a lot of it's crash-related data. If you don't have a crash there, and a lot of crashes don't even collect pedestrian and bike, crashes unless they get hit by a car. So we have a lot of data we're missing on vulnerable road users. How are you going to systemically tackle those areas? I mean, we're putting 4-lane roadways. It's not rocket science to know McKee. We're going to pummel someone there. But are we going to have in our action plan, how are we going to handle the vulnerable road users?
Yeah, so we're, as part of that Safe Streets for All grant, the MPO has put together what's called a high injury network, where they take crash data from all over the country, and then, they concentrate on the state and the county and then the MPO area itself, which is, the direct Madison suburbs, basically. And that high injury network aggregates all that crash data and then identifies problem intersections, even if they haven't had a crash within the study period, which for their high injury network, I believe, was 5 years. So it looks at, like you said, roads like McKee, which are 2 lanes in each direction. The pedestrian infrastructure is not great for most of McKee. It takes similar intersections throughout the state and the country and says the crash rate at these intersections that involves a severe pedestrian injury or fatality is whatever number higher than a neighborhood street, say. And then it basically applies that to McKee, flags those intersections and says, these are the intersections that you should address for this crash type, because we see similar crashes in similar looking intersections in other places.
Yeah, where it came to mind for the gentleman here, because I'd asked Tim on the McKee Road for the development there. I wasn't a big fan of the right in, right out for that development, but I asked, what about the road users on there? Now you're introducing a lot of traffic on there. What's our threshold or our data set where we would actually put in underpass or overpass there? And then that's why I said it's got to be holistic. If you're going to have growth and development and you're going to be reaching that, maybe it's this action plan that says, once the car volume is this, or once you're going to have a lot of people stopping for the buses, we should start looking at one within the next 10 years, 20 years. Now's the time to ding the developers for that infrastructure you need so that you have it in place when your volumes and your data come to light.
And yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that the comprehensive safety action plan will contain.
Okay.
Is, metrics like that. So, and actual concrete steps forward for our existing infrastructure as well. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. As you're well aware, the city of Madison has gone through this, and I seriously, anyone that knows me, I have quite heartburn with when people come and say Madison does that, we should do the same thing. And the example I'll give you is Whitney Way, which is a main thoroughfare, and they put a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on there. So when you're going Whitney Way, even if you're at a dead stop at the top of the hill, you're speeding at the bottom, and the police sit and write tickets there. In the winter, when it's icy, you can't get up the hill if it's 25. And you've seen many next door posts about people. The speed has been reduced significantly in neighborhoods, and then it becomes an enforcement issue. I'm not sure it's making things too much safer. But I'd like you to go to page, in your packet, page 54, data-driven approach, transparency and accountability. Number 7, this is a streets, this is a streets program, and I get tired of this stuff, this word salad. Number 7, equity-focused analysis and programs. Commitment is made to equitable approach and outcomes, including prioritizing engagement investments in traditionally underserved communities and adopting equitable traffic enforcement practices. I'm tired of this baloney. Underserved, what's underserved? I have the two lowest income parts of the city in my district. One of them we just went through, and we year before last we resurfaced all the streets. We've installed medians. We've put speed bumps in that neighborhood. Same in my neighborhood. Our streets aren't falling apart. I stay focused on our darn streets and keep the social stuff out of this. I would like item number 7 removed, and then later on you go on. And I think it's insulting. Exactly where it is in there. It talks about they're mentioning people of color, like that they're not capable of crossing streets. That's insulting to people of color, that they can't cross streets or what. Geez, if I'm a person of color, I'd be embarrassed that we even put that in there. Statistics show, yes, there'll be a higher, there's maybe higher accident rates. It's more. But I don't think we should even mention that in there. If you want to show that statistic, but in there we're specifically calling out people of color, and I think that's demeaning to them to even have that statement in. I lost my agenda here. Give me a sec. But stay focused on the streets. Get out of the social part of this stuff. We're all in this together, and I'm tired of that. So Section 7 does not belong in there. Say we're going to do a fair job of things, but always spelling out. We have to equitable underserved. Well, what the hell's on the underserved neighborhood? They all have the same services, garbage, police. I'm sick and tired of that. So I would like number 7 pulled out of there. This is a great document, a lot of great things, but those should come out. And the other thing I'll mention when we talk about the statistics, the people that have died. Unfortunately, I've grown up in this state. I believe Bill was it that say there were 11 fatalities in the last 10 years or 12. Well, 3 or 4 of them occurred right at the end of Lacey Road. Where a bunch of young guys were drunk and they went right off and hit the big oak tree that's there. Straight ahead. They were drinking. I think a large percentage of those are alcohol, and the poor teacher, out walking on a road in the dark and got hit. A foggy day. Some of the statistics I think are somewhat skewed. I think our streets we've made some huge safety improvements. If we just look at the Verona Road corridor, we used to have a crossing, Williamsburg Way, going across the lanes of that highway, and people were killed there. No, it's a very safe, the on and offs. We've us and the state have made some huge investments to improve it, but just keep it focused on our, keep the social stuff out of this. Just focus on our streets and keeping our people safe. That's the only comment I have.
Dave, this document comes from the National Vision Zero effort. And I think what they're saying is nationally, here are the statistics. These are the trends that we see nationally. And if Fitchburg is doing better, then great, we're doing better, and that's less work for us to do to catch up. But, simply pointing out here that lower income places tend to have fewer sidewalks, nationwide. This is something to keep in mind regardless of where you are. It's a reminder to keep doing what we're doing if we're doing it correctly.
I say calling out this equity thing every time I turn around this city, everything is equitable, in the last few years, we've been told by the current mayor and other, everything we've been doing the last 40 years is inequitable. I've been on this board 33 years. I think I've made decisions that were in the best interest of our citizens, whether they're black, yellow, white. I'm making decisions in the best interests of all our neighbors, and I think our leaders have. And now, everything is inequitable, and I'm tired of it. I would like it removed from, our document here is all I'm saying. All right, I said enough.
Dave, I could kind of add with it. Again, it is a national one. If anything, while they're trying to go holistically with it, is right now the mindset in a lot of places, and probably it's not Ross's here, it's not, it's so centric to an automobile, and the roadway is made for the automobile, and they have the number one priority. It's the vulnerable road users, those that don't have vehicles, that have to rely on traversing that and going across it. That's where I think Ross and Tim can have the best effect. It's not going to be monumental, but it's as simple as, okay, what's our game plan for McKee when we start getting more people with the growth and development in there that want to cross it? How are we going to get them across there safely? It could be as simple as how he does the signal timing, and adjust that. A lot of times the signal timing is set for a vehicle so we don't queue them up so much, not the slowest road user that has to cross the thing. They get just stuck in the middle, and then so it's simple things like that. It's certain intersections that I think if he highlights, we'll say, hey, you know what? Let's take the permissive left turns out of there. It's the toughest thing to try to cross a roadway with a bike or a little kid when you have a permissive left turn, when that road user wants to get out of there and get through there fast.
You're absolutely
It could be some of the locations we have already in there, like at McKee and Fish, where you have the no right turn in that lane there. You got the light, it lights it up, someone hits the activator, and it says no right turn. That's one of the safest things we could do, and we're doing it. But maybe it's just now they'll look at hot spots and say, okay, let's start looking at more of them where we'll do this type of growth and development in that mindset.
I have a philosophical difference. I want everyone to survive and live a long life. Same time, and I want what?
I want everybody to feel equal.
I absolutely. At the same time, you can't rely on personal responsibility, and I have an issue even saying that, and people being irresponsible have gotten themselves killed or other people killed. I understand that. I don't even like seeing that in there. Just saying people aren't responsible, or relying on people being responsible, can't get it done. I'm just an old school guy.
And maybe to piggyback, I'm not saying we're adopting what Madison does is what we have. Again, it's their philosophy, speed kills. If you can reduce the speed and you have a 2,000-pound vehicle running someone over on a bike or whatever, if you can reduce them by 5 miles per hour, it's just going to be that much better. But I'm not suggesting we do that. But they have other stuff like the traffic calming. We're doing the speed humps and maybe speed tables. Are we going to do like small islands, stuff like that? We're going to, and again, if our action plan has those identified, that's where you two gentlemen at the end would really benefit in that holistic approach to say, how are we going to fund those small incremental fixes in these locations?
All for those.
I think if we target those, I think it's a win-win for us.
Yeah.
And Ross, maybe you can just say a few more words about how the implementation of this might go. I'm kind of envisioning relying on that high injury network to identify, the places that have the greatest danger within the city, and we do whatever incremental changes we can at those places as well as wherever we happen to be doing resurfacing that year.
So my vision for the comprehensive safety action plan is that we basically come out of that with both a toolbox of things like Don, you were saying, these small things that we can do that we know work. And then we also have basically a checklist of physical locations in the city that we can have ranked by the highest impact for the lowest cost, basically. And we can have different metrics than that if we want to. That's just kind of the thing that popped into my head when we started this process. And then we can go down that list and say, okay, we've fixed all of the easy locations that we get a lot of benefit to fixing, whether it's because we were doing a project already in our street resurfacing, or we thought it was important enough to put a new project in our CIP or use road funding for it. And then eventually we will get to the hard areas that cost a lot of money to fix for not a ton of benefit. And then that'll be up to council to make decisions on what to fund.
Yeah, I have a Six Sigma, in process improvement. What you're describing, you're looking for the lowest hanging fruit, and that's where you get the most gain. And so that's, I'm going to count on you guys to identify that. So, Bill and I can, we can get those things approved. The most bang for the buck, and the larger ones, we'll see where that goes. But I think our the most improvement is going to be from smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get people around here that quit running lights and speeding. That'd be number one on my list right there, to slow them down.
So
I get past and I'm doing a little over 25, it looks like I'm going the opposite direction.
The Beltline, they did a speed enforcement, they got 4 people going 100 miles an hour.
Did they?
So that is part of the Vision Zero kind of ethos, I guess, or how we are shifting our thinking with Vision Zero is we know people are going to run red lights and speed no matter what we do. We're still going to do our best to reduce those behaviors with stuff like enforcement and speed bumps, and we can't have red light cameras in Wisconsin, but if that was an option, that would be something.
That'd be great.
But we can also plan around and build our environment with our streets to make speeding and red light running less dangerous for vulnerable road users like pedestrians and bicyclists. So they're not in the street at the same time where it's most probable someone's running a red light and stuff like that.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not against any of that. No, all right, I'm right with you. It's just some of this wording in here, I get tired of that here.
Well, so Dave, it's been less than 10 years since Verona Road was widened, and who were the communities impacted by far the most? That was one of our H&I neighborhoods, Jamestown, and on the other side of the street, the Allied Drive neighborhood.
Yep.
So, we're not kings of equity here in Fitchburg either.
Well, that helped that improved the safety of both of those neighborhoods. So.
Well, they also now have to deal with more traffic, more road noise, more pollution. That's living next to a freeway increases all mortality.
I live next to it. I hear it once in a while. It's just, Bill, I would disagree with you. I think it's made it safer. People can cross over the top now. It's safe going over the top and the merging, people getting home. But discussion for another time, I guess, my friend.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the other point is, this document outlines it's a holistic approach, and I guess the point I like to make is that a lot of people say that safety is a shared responsibility. But if you're in the car and you make a mistake, you'll kill somebody who's walking or biking. If you're walking or biking and you make a mistake, you're the one who dies. Yep. So the greater burden ought to be on the person in the vehicle doing the killing, and we ought to do our best to not increase that burden by engineering our street so that if they make a mistake, it's not so costly. And that's what Vision Zero is about. And a lot of the changes, that we would make here would be very different within a residential area, within, a downtown area versus, I guess, to put it in strong towns parlance, a street versus a road. If you're on a high-speed road, okay, it's meant for high-speed vehicles, and we got to plan for it to be that. But if you're, if you're in a residential area, if you're in a downtown area with a lot of driveways, then we got to treat the road differently.
Anything else? All right. Sorry to monopolize the discussion.
Figure out how much money we're going to spend on all this?
That is part of the comprehensive safety action plan. It's putting a dollar amount to all of these things.
And how much is the people that are here retired going to have to cut out of their retirement just to pay for increase in taxes to do this stuff? This is getting to be a high-tax city.
Well, it's also true that the taxes paid to the city over the last 5 years have been relatively flat, and versus inflation, they've taken a nosedive.
Lacey Road didn't take a nosedive.
My suggestion, maybe Tim and Ross, is when you get your action plan together, maybe just show the group here. I think there's a plethora of low-cost stuff.
Yes.
They have,
Yeah.
they can have access. I don't, do you have control now of all the signals now, or does Madison still do the timing and stuff for us?
So we pay Madison to do all the engineering on our signals. If there's changes that we would like made, we consult with Madison and either make those changes, or if they have a strong opinion that sways us in a different direction, then we can go that way too. But to continue on your bringing this comprehensive safety action plan back to the board, that will all be approved or not through the council process. So it'll come back to this board, TTC, probably Bike and Pedestrian Commission as well, and then be approved by Common Council or be looked at by Common Council.
Okay, thank you.
What's the timing, Ross, your estimate, to get the consultant and come up with a safety action plan? Are we a year from now? Would you have that for us?
So that was the original timeline, basically. But we now have not heard anything from the U.S. Department of Transportation, who has said they will give us this grant money. We have not heard anything from them in several months. So that timeline is very much up in the air.
Okay.
I would expect at this point, Q4 of 2026 at the absolute earliest to see this plan, and probably more likely Q1 of 2027.
Let me ask you this: if the money isn't forthcoming, is this something between you and the skilled TTC members could do ourselves internally?
My first thought would be to explore other funding sources for the plan. This would be a huge lift for staff and TTC to do ourselves, and there's a lot of very skilled consultants who specialize in this work.
Well, look into the option. I don't want it languishing, I guess is what I'm saying. You guys have you've put the effort in, TTC and you and city staff put the effort in. We'd like to get it move it along if we can. So if you keep us posted on it, I guess is what I'd say as far as the funding for the consultant. Okay. All right. Any other discussion?
My only suggestion, I hope you get the money, and I wouldn't let it go, but your team, again, it's got to be more than just engineering looking at this, because that's the one component of it, but just how law enforcement logs crashes and how they do it. They have a lot of good insight and input on the near hits and that it would be nice to get their input on how we could do it. And I will circle back with the planning side of things. That's where we got the best leverage in how this city's grown and developing. You'll see how it's going to push in that little water balloon on one side or the other, and we're going to have a problem here, folks, if we don't start doing it, and you lack the infrastructure money. So how are we going to get at that for you is going to be key, and I think they'll be helpful in that aspect. But I get your team together now on holistically how can we tackle this, so our thinking isn't just it's the user's fault every time. So,
All right. Anything else? Then let's call the vote. All in favor?
Well, hang on a second. Just
go ahead, Bill.
For discussion purposes here, I'll move that we remove the last whereas clause.
Whereas the goal of the comprehensive safety action plan is to develop a holistic, that one?
Right. That's the first mention of the plan.
Okay.
Either removal or restructuring so that there's a proper introduction to what it is and what its function would be.
What would you suggest, I guess? I'm fine with removing it unless you want to have some other.
That's what I was thinking as well. There's over a dozen whereas clauses that basically talk about things that the comprehensive safety action plan would implement, I think.
Okay. I entertain a motion to remove the last whereas clause. It's in page 63 of your packet here. Entertain a motion to remove that, or amendment to remove that.
I did move for that.
You moved it? Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Discussion. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the amendment passes, removing the last whereas clause. Thank you, Bill. Now back to the
Main motion.
main motion. All those in favor of approval of resolution R 6925, adopting Vision Zero, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry to be obtuse here. All right. Next, all right, Ben is here. Approving change order number 1 for Fitchburg Road and Goose Lake Stormwater Improvement Project. We have a motion to approve this amendment, which is R 6725.
I motion we approve R 6725.
Moved by Don. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Jetser. As I understand it, most of this is cost to have Madison has a more, maybe more up-to-date stormwater model, and we're going to use them to model our input into Goose Lake and the larger output and its effect on Badger Mill Creek. Am I in the ballpark?
That's basically right, yes. And, this is almost one of those weird instances where, this change order was more so initiated by myself than our consultant here. So what I found was the city of Madison had recently completed a stormwater model for their lower Badger Mill Creek watershed, and just a little background that they've been spending all sorts of money on putting together these I'll say high quality models for the watersheds throughout the city. So the existing model that the city of Fitchburg had was using some inputs from an older, it's called a HAC-HMS model, but it was older. It wasn't calibrated in the same way that the city of Madison's model was actually calibrated to real world events. And when I passed it along to the consultant, we found that there were actually some pretty large discrepancies in just kind of flows and water surface elevations between this newer model that we're able to use versus the older HAC-HMS model. So being that, this area is very, very sensitive to any kind of change in variable or inputs, in the model, as far as, you know, a little change can have a pretty big effect on, you know, the outcomes upstream and downstream. You know, I pretty strongly believe it's important to be using the best available information, so we can inform our design decisions, and be much more confident with the results that we're seeing, and ultimately we can be more confident with whatever the final construction project is.
Okay. Well, Ben, what the hell does the bike bridge have to do with this?
Yeah, so
you gotta enlighten me here.
Yep. So this is the bike bridge. It's west of Goose Lake, so it's kind of in the Dane County wetland area, immediately south of 18151. The water in the Dane County wetland area actually goes under that bike bridge, goes through a culvert, continues to travel west on the north side of 18151.
Oh, that's the bridge. You're not talking about our bridge by
No,
Park.
no,
Okay.
no.
I know
So
which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep, it's basically
Yeah, I know which one. It's a concrete bridge down there.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's a
we
bottleneck
need to
there.
have a little bit of understanding of how the
Yeah.
water's being conveyed through that area.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what we're looking to find out.
Well, if you talk to them, in my experience, many years being on that trail after large rains, you know, they have the large detention basins on the other side of Verona Road.
Yep.
And then they do a pretty good job of, but then they got a culvert under Verona Road, and it's kind of a mucky ditch before it gets back into the area close to where the Mass and Met discharge used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is when you'd have a lot of rain and that'd be flowing through there, it would be scouring that mud out of there. They should have rip-wrapped that from the, they could reduce the sediment going substantially. This isn't our problem, but I've mentioned it too many times. They'd rip-wrap that section from where it goes under Verona Road to where, you know, by the bridge there. They would reduce, you know,
Sure.
it's constantly churning up mud and you know, if they could just take care of that little, it's like a 150-foot section.
Right,
And
right,
it
right.
would improve
After
the
those
quality.
culverts,
Right.
immediately downstream. Sure.
That would improve Badger Mill, not our issue. Okay. Other questions? I'm sorry, monopolize this. Bill?
And so when you reference Nesbit Pond,
That is the pond that Dave was actually also just referencing. So it's owned by the city of Madison. It's on the north side of 18151.
just by the intersection of Nesbit and Maple Grove Drive?
Could
It's,
be.
oh, it's, picture. It's,
Oh, it's that little one by the Bavarian sausage?
no, that's
No,
ours. That's ours. It's farther, that's the one right there, that big one.
Yeah, okay.
Right there.
Yep, Nesbit Maple Grove.
Right,
Yeah,
right
those
there,
are the
that
two
one,
roads
yeah.
there.
That's
Yep.
the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. So that's almost, I mean, the start of Badger Mill Creek in its current form, right? So you know, if you look kind of south and west of that on that photo, parallel to 18151 on the south side, that's actually Badger Mill Creek. So we're trying to get water there. They need to get their water there, but we need to make sure that their water isn't going to backflow in the opposite direction, so that, you know, what kind of
I'm with you.
you know, backflow prevention device do we need to use, if we need to use one? Answer some of those questions for us.
You may or you may not, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you look at that picture, there's kind of a darker green area there. I think that's, no, come back. It's a brighter green. It's a circular right there.
Sure, yeah, so
That's
that
the
area.
marsh, and sometimes that's full of water, and, you know, almost right up the trail, and then when it dries out, you know, it's kind of a valuable wetland. There's a lot of animals in there, and like I say, sometimes it's full, sometimes it's not. But would our water work its way through that, Ben, from Goose Lake?
Yeah, and it I mean, it does kind of now, so I mean, once
Okay.
Goose Lake gets up to a certain elevation, it'll go through those culverts. It kind of sits around in those kind of smaller little pockets. But eventually it could get into there. The water needs to get high enough, of course,
Yeah.
so it can overflow into there, but yeah. I mean, there's some years maybe it doesn't get that high, or water, you know, City of Fitchburg water doesn't get in there. If you've got enough rain, you know, it can get in there.
So this study, though, it's our effect on, we're assessing our stormwater from Fitchburg, you know, from Goose Lake, its effect on Badger Mill Creek, which it's not in our city per se, but we have it has to
Right,
be,
it's a
the effect has to
valuable
be evaluated.
resource as a trout stream,
Understood.
and you know, of course, the wetlands upstream are all Dane County land, and
Yeah.
Also a valuable resource.
Okay.
Do we, you found some vulnerabilities with our current HEC modeling, with discrepancies, so you want to use this one. Does that make the rest of our stormwater modeling we're doing for the rest of Fitchburg vulnerable?
No, it would just be, so what we're getting from Madison is just they've got a little watershed model of Lower Badger Mill Creek, but it's strictly within their area or within their city. Our model is strictly within Fitchburg, but we know that there's water coming from Madison, so we have to account from that, and that's that older model that we were using. So we're just taking that one out. We're going to be putting this one in. But as far as other models in the city, it wouldn't have any impact. Just the model, because just this Goose Lake model, because it's in that vicinity.
We don't get infiltration from other border areas with Madison, from their water?
Sure, like in Nine Springs, but the city doesn't have a complex model for Nine Springs. We've got different models for Nine Springs, but not really a flooding-based model for Nine Springs. If we ever were to put one together, you know, we could use the city of, because I believe the city of Madison did finish their model. They might actually be in the process of it right now. They have a pretty small area in the Nine Springs watershed. But if we were ever to put a flood model together, I would be looking to use information from them for that.
What's the budget source is this, the dollars for this coming from?
This is coming from the dredging and retrofit.
That's right.
budget.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else have anything on this one? What's the schedule to increase that outflow structure on Goose Lake? It's not done yet, is it?
No, it hasn't been completed yet.
Okay.
So once we get this work completed and we have some more comfort levels with the result that we're getting, we'll have some more meetings with Dane County. Ultimately, it's their land, so they've got to be completely on board. But ideally, you know, I'd like to see if we can get something accomplished over the winter when the ground is hard out there.
Do you know what MMSD was doing with that big series of pipes and stuff they had? You saw it right from Verona Road as you were going, basically at the south end of Goose Lake.
They're doing a few things kind of out there. So they've been doing some survey work, but there was also, I believe, a force main that was in very poor condition. So that might have been kind of a temporary type of a Band-Aid project. But again, I would have to talk with them specifically.
No need. No necesito. All right, any other questions? All right. Call the vote. All in favor of Resolution R 6725, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Page down. Getting near the end, guys. Thank you for hanging in there with me. We just have one more. Next, we have, that was that one. Hang on. We have the whole agenda packet. It takes me a while to scroll down. Okay. So, we have a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-007, amending Chapter 3067, private well prohibited, and Chapter 40-90, exclusive agricultural land waiver. A motion to approve.
I move approval.
I'll second it.
Moved by Alder Jetser, second by Dave Wilborn. Looks like this is giving you authority to have them replace a private well in the agricultural land, even if the water main runs within 200 feet of the location.
Correct. So this would amend ordinance, the chapter 30-67, and it would address a situation where a Fitchburg farm property is located within 200 feet of municipal water main, but the farmhouse is located more than 150 feet from the right-of-way. If the existing well serving the farmhouse failed, connecting the house to the municipal water main could be very expensive. So this ordinance would allow the existing well to be replaced based on the 5 conditions located within the proposed ordinance.
Okay. So the 5 conditions, if I'm reading, the private well is not used to obtain or provide water. No, that's not right.
Yeah, the 5 conditions would be the existing single-family residential home utilized a private well to obtain water for human consumption, and said well is being replaced. The second condition is the existing single-family residential home is located on the same property as the private well to be replaced. Third condition is the nearest corner of the existing single-family residential home is greater than 150 feet from the right-of-way. Fourth conditions, the private well is located on a parcel that is zoned AT transitional agricultural, AS small lot agricultural, or AX exclusive agriculture. And the fifth conditions, the private well meets all the required well operation permit conditions set forth in section 30-64.
Thank you, Tim. Is this also known as the Mark Jones exemption?
Yeah. There you go.
All right, thank you. I believe that spells it out pretty clearly. Any questions on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Bill, why don't you go? Bill, then Don.
Well, I've got a couple here, but we can go back and forth. So the referral sheet says within 200 feet of the main, but the conditions say 150 feet from the right-of-way. Why does it say from the right-of-way rather than a distance from the main? Because that's really what drives the cost, right?
Yeah, typically the city, when we install a water main, will install the service to the right-of-way. So then the homeowner's responsible from taking it from the right-of-way to the house. So hence the reason from the right-of-way with this ordinance.
Okay, so if it's 200 feet from the main, but the right-of-way from that point is 50 feet, the city will take that part of it, leaving 150 feet to be paid by the resident.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don?
The criteria whereby you're giving them an exemption, who's verifying that? Are we just, if they just check all the boxes, we're good because we got a piece of paper? Or
We would be verifying everything.
Okay.
Making sure they meet the requirements.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, so we're talking about wells on agricultural land. So I think probably every well in the county is contaminated with PFAS, and if it's on agricultural land, there's probably a greater probability that it's got
Atrazine.
additional pollution, E. coli, or any pesticide residue. I don't see anything in the list of conditions about having the water tested to make sure that it's truly safe for human consumption.
Well, the existing well would have to meet all the standards. So in order for it to be replaced, they would have to apply for the permitting for that. And
okay, so that's built into the permitting.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I guess, is this like in perpetuity they can do this? If somebody's well fails 3 weeks after we put this ordinance in and they put in a new well, and then 25 years later that one fails for some reason, are they free to put in another one? Or do we say, hey, if you're 25 years out from when we put this water main in, you're going to eventually have to hook up to it?
As it stands right now, as long as the property would remain in agriculture, they would be allowed to do that. Or if the property changed zoning out of agriculture, then they would have to connect. And then two, obviously, if the ordinance were to change in the future, that could be a possibility too.
Okay, and then if somebody has a split available, they put up a new residence, that one would have to be hooked up to the city water, right?
Correct.
Good question. Anything else? Okay.
I'll just note that on the referral sheet here, it says both Plan Commission and Ag and Rural Affairs postponed this and didn't take any action on it. Tim, can you give us a summary as to, is there information in the packet on why they did that?
No, I did watch the Ag and Rural Affairs video, and they kind of wanted Public Works staff to attend their next meeting to kind of explain how that 150 feet was established. So Tracy Foss will be attending their next meeting, explaining that.
So this won't be at council tomorrow. It'll be going.
It will get postponed tomorrow.
Okay.
Until it goes back to Ag and Plan Commission.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Any more comments? Call the vote. All in favor of ordinance 2025-0-07 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. I hope there's one thing that unless you have good water, your property is not worth much. All right. Next, we have Resolution R4725, approving relocation order for construction of Sain Interceptor Phase 2 extension. Do we have a motion to approve?
And so, I move that we approve resolution number R-47-25.
Moved by Dave. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second by Don. I believe we had this before, and at council last time, we asked you, after Mr. Haith talked, we asked if you could show us an overlay on the property there to see that we weren't in the environmental corridor. And I think that's what I see up there. The environmental corridor is on the top.
Yes, so here's the said property, 5098 Haight Farm Road, and this is the proposed location of the interceptor.
Yep.
So the interceptor is going within the 75-foot wetland setback, and then also the 30-foot wetland setback. Here's kind of the line here. So we're outside of that,
Okay.
the actual pipe, but it would be the temporary construction easement kind of infringes upon the 30-foot wetland setback line. And then the 75-foot setback line has the pipe in it. And then the actual limit of the wetland delineation is this red or green line here.
Okay. All right. Questions on this? Again, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't where the pipe wasn't going to be.
And Carp C does allow for environmental corridors, utilities to be located within the corridors. Here's kind of a map. All these green areas are the environmental corridors with the wetland setback lines. So you can see we have existing pipe within these corridors.
Yeah.
And then also Madison Metropolitan Sewage District also has their pipes.
Yeah.
You know, without us going through these corridors, we'd never be able to get it to the plant.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you for taking the time to look at that one more time. I didn't think feel there was an issue or that I was going to be destroying the downstream water quality by going across this man's property here or getting an easement. Any other questions?
Yeah, I seem to recall our discussion was we were worried about if we're taking out his septic or taking out his well.
So we did look into that too. The well's actually in the front yard, so we won't be impacting the well. And the interceptor actually looks like it does go through the drain field. However, there is the mandatory connection to the interceptor as part of that. So he would be abandoning that drain field and then connecting to the interceptor.
So how does I'm sorry, I got to ask this. How does the billing on that work? You know, like, as they're in the urban service territory, our sewage rate is based on our water rate how much water we use. That's essentially the sewer charge. How does, when you're not taking city water, how is that calculated? Do we have a meter on his, on the discharge, you know, from his, into the, I can't imagine we got a meter on, on his home.
Yeah, I don't think the city has many sewer meters, if at all. So that is a valid question that we'll have to look into, and it may be just that gets metered.
They did it to me for years.
Oh, okay, we have an expert here.
What they do is say you got a family of 4, so they take the average of the family of 4 in the city that's getting charged for their sewer rate, for the water going in. That's what they did to me for several years before I got city water.
Okay.
So it depends, okay, so when the city goes there, he wants to make sure all the kids are gone. It's only, maybe only him there.
But I'm saying, that's
Yeah,
what they
I
did to me
understand.
for several years.
Well, Tim, can you check and see if that methodology is still in place? It won't affect.
We'll do.
It won't affect this. Thank you, Dave. All right. And again, guys, we're hoping to, we're hoping to negotiate an easement here without having to condemn, but we will. This is giving the city the authority to negotiate here.
We don't pay for the connection, do we?
We do not.
Yeah, so you're going to be condemning this. If I had a perfectly good septic field, drain field, and you're taking it out on me, I'd like to be compensated for that. Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Let the negotiations begin. If I was him, I'd be glad to be rid of my septic field and not have, way ahead, not having a septic tank and all that. Yeah.
I never had any problem with my septic until they put city sewer in, and if in less than a year, who put it in, it sunk. And I had to have it redone.
Darn Paul, you're still mad at Paul about that, aren't you? All right.
Tim,
go ahead.
Can can there be a line as the interceptor is being put in there? Can we stub in a line for this guy to save some cost, or is he gonna have to wait till after everything's done and then dig some trenches and?
Yeah, that's something we'll look at it as part of the design to have a connection. That would be part of it.
Good point. Thank you. Any other questions? Call the vote. All in favor of resolution R4725 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So I believe we are at the point here. Our next meeting is May 5th. If you can't make it, please let us know. Make sure we have a quorum. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move we adjourn.
Moved by Wilburn, second by Jetser. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.